So the mission of Bosque Redondo Memorial is to interpret the history of the Diné, or the Navajo, and the Inde, or the Mescalero Apache, and the ethnic persecution that was employed by the U.S. government in the 1860s. So interpret that history with as much truth that's available to us.
And why would somebody want to come to this place?
Well, it's a very unique site in that we have many layers of history. You know, the main purpose of our site is to interpret the history of when this place was a reservation. That's the whole purpose of why Fort Sumner was here. But you know, as I said, there's many layers to it. You know, we offer a lot of history of, you know, that talks about when this place was a fort, but we also talk about the hardships of when the people were actually brought here by the hundreds and by the thousands. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to heal from this history, because it's not a history that's talked about in, you know, in contemporary society, especially in the past. You know, we think about when this place first opened, you know, in 1970, and you know, one of the very first exhibits that came in here was Fort Sumner, an American concentration camp, and it wasn't very well received. I mean, we're just coming off of World War II, and to think about the United States in that particular light was not very enticing, and it was not, again, not very well received. So in the 80s, you know, the exhibit that came in there was the soldiers, the Indians, and Billy. So it offered kind of a new perspective, a new thing to talk about, you know, talk about when the Maxwells were here. But it kind of, it buried that part of history of when this place was, it was a concentration camp for multiple cultures. And it wasn't really the purpose to, from my research, it wasn't the purpose to ethnically cleanse those people, but it was cultural assimilation or cultural genocide was what was taking place here. So we interpret that history, and we're trying to offer a place that has a decolonized perspective. We're trying to incorporate more of stories from the people who were affected by this history and that are still in existence today. A lot of people believe that, well, the Navajo and the Mescalero Apache came here, but those cultures have died off and they don't exist anymore. That's kind of a belief that, you know, a lot of people have when they come through our doors. But no, this is recent history. This recently affected the people. And when we think about some of the major pieces of this history, the Peace Treaty of 1868, which was recently donated to, the Tappan copy was recently donated to the Navajo Nation. That's still a very much living document that is affecting the people to this day. A lot of people come here, you know, who have been in the boarding school experience. That is a direct product of Fort Sumner and that history. And that, you know, was affecting people up into the 1970s. So that is still very much a recent part of history that we can interpret here. So there's a lot of, we can offer the people a lot of pieces, a lot of layers of history. It is not just on the surface that this was an American frontier fort. There is so much more to talk about here.